Hello and welcome to the very first video on our brand new Ice Cross Elements YouTube channel. My name is Luca Dalago and I've created this to have a platform to share my thoughts on all things related to ice cross for two reasons. The first would be to help out anyone who wants to improve as a rider. All the next videos we'll post in the upcoming few months will focus heavily on riding technique, and later on we'll also get to the physical preparation, race strategy and all these other elements us riders need to work on. And the second reason why I opened up this channel is to just create some interesting content for everyone that likes and follows the sport. Alright, enough for the introduction. Let's now move on to the main part of this video. The first bunch of videos on this channel will all be about the fundamentals of riding. And next to being able to skate, there's nothing more fundamental than pumping. And as you probably know, all the tracks we race each year have their own unique layout, but you get plenty of chances to pump on all of them, and that's why it's so important. And it's also very interesting because pumping comes in many ways and forms, since each track looks so different. There's big pumps, small pumps, uphill pumps, pumps where you come in flying, sections where the transition is very rough, and so on and so forth. But even though not every pump is created equal, the principle of how you should ride it stays the same. It's all about elevating that center of mass towards the center of the radius of the obstacle you're riding over. So let's have a closer look. Alright, here we go. Let's start things off with this little pumptrack jump here as an example. So whenever you come up to a section like that, you want to do two things. First, you want to ride up to it in a low position. Not as low as possible, but as low as you can get while still being very comfortable with your balance. That's important because you will have to put down a lot of power into the ground during the second thing you have to do, which is extending your body all the way up as you go through the transition. And so you can see that pumping is all about first bending and then extending. The more distance you're able to create throughout this extension, the better, and the more you will accelerate. But how does this actually work? Well, easy explanation, physics is why. It works because of something called conservation of angular momentum. One of the best examples of this physics law in sports is a spinning figure skater. He spins at a certain rate with his leg and his arms extended away from his body, and then once he brings his limbs closer to his core, he spins at a much faster rate. Now, to understand how both the figure skater and the pump track fit together, I have to change the perspective here. So let's have a look at the figure skater from a bird's eye view. You can see his fingertips follow this circular path on the outside here, and as he brings his arms closer to his chest, he spins faster because more of his weight is now near the center of the spin. And following the law of conservation of angular momentum, the rate of his spin will increase as a result. And if we now use a segment of this circle to draw in a jump, it becomes clear why you need to extend your body. Because the transition of the jump changed your momentum from being more or less linear to angular. Because your whole body is now rotating around not the figure skater's head, but your axis of rotation. And so, just like in the figure skating example, acceleration in this case is also all about bringing your weight from as far as possible to as close as possible to the axis of rotation. So the further away your center of mass is from this axis at the beginning of the transition, meaning the lower you can ride into it, and the closer you can bring your center of mass towards this axis at the end of the transition, meaning the more upright you are at the end of the pump, the more you will accelerate. For everyone who wants to dive a little bit deeper into this, I'll put the link of an article in the description where an actual physicist talks about this concept. And we'll now have one last look at our pump track example to see how you can maximize your speed using what we've just learned. As you can see, I'm in a nice and low position. and more importantly I have my arms back here. This doesn't really change much as far as my center of mass is concerned, but it's very important for the actual pump coming up. Since we want to lift our weight away from the transition, we need to put as much force down into the ground as possible. And I like to compare this to a vertical jump. Of course, whenever you try to jump as high as possible from a standing position, you're going to swing your arms first back and then up as you're about to take off. And by doing that, you're able to increase the ground reaction force and you're able to jump a little bit higher than you would without arm swing. This is very intuitive when all you have to do is jump. On a pump track, however, things are a little more complicated because there's so much other movement involved, and just getting the timing right is a big challenge in itself. So what you could do is pick one jump that you're comfortable with, or even easier, a ramp like this one here. Once you got it figured out, you should try to use your arms as much as you can over all kinds of other obstacles. There are still many other things to consider, but I think we covered the basics. So that's it for the first part of pumping. I think it's, or at least for me, it was interesting to learn a little bit about the physics behind pumping. And in the next video, we'll get more into the specifics and look at different kinds of obstacles and what to consider when you ride them. So stay tuned as we keep pumping out these videos.